financial literacy, and the human condition. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam.
Hi, it's Francis. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching this video. If you're catching us on YouTube, please help us help others by clicking like, subscribe, and all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check back for the next video. I think you're going to love it. Thanks again. For more information, you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com.
Welcome to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam. Hi.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
I am good, and we have a guest today, and it's a familiar face.
I'm always happy when he comes on the show. So we have Senator Michael D. Brown, the non-voting shadow senator.
Mm-hmm.
He's also an economist, and I've asked him to be here today so that we could talk about money and other things. So welcome back, Senator Brown.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to talk to you. And let me tell you that since you brought it up, and since it's tax day, and since I just put my check in the mail to the federal government, I have to point out that, yes, the people of the District of Columbia pay the highest per capita taxes in America, but yet we don't have a voting member of Congress, and we really need to change that. But that being said, let's move on to the things that you want to talk about.
Well, nice try, but I have one more little thing to talk about. Not a little thing, a couple of things for you, just to set the background for people about what you've been doing. So a shadow senator doesn't get paid. So you've been doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Maybe that's how politics should work. But we're talking about what, 700,000 people in
700,000 people, yes.
Yeah, 700,000 people in DC. You put a sign on your lawn about 4 years ago that I just saw posted on X, if anybody wants to go and look for it. Big warning sign, basically telling people, look, if you want to live in DC, you might be giving up your basic civil right. You are giving up your basic civil right to vote. Now, 700,000 people, I have to wonder, out of 700,000 people, how many people you think, just to ballpark, are unhappy with the way things are going with the economy today and what's going on with the government? Maybe those are separate questions, but can you give us some insight on what you feel in DC?
Well, you know, in DC, there are no Republicans in DC. I mean, there's like 6 of them, and we keep track of them with those little ankle bracelets. But we're the most democratic jurisdiction, and by democratic, I mean Democratic Party in America. 80% of registered voters that have a party affiliation are Democrats. When you win the Democratic primary in Washington, D.C., you don't even bother to go out on election day. You just go out and give donuts. You don't campaign, because no one who has ever won the Democratic primary has ever lost a general election. So we're never happy with any Republican, to be honest with you. You know, we're liberal Democrats. But now, especially, people in Washington, D.C. feel wounded. One reason is because of a recent move that was made in the budget process, in the budget bill that was passed by the House and now passed by the Senate. We lose $1.1 billion of our own money. I mean, this is ridiculous. We cannot spend $1.1 billion of our own tax money that we've raised in local taxes, and between now and October 30th. We have to cut $1.1 billion out of our budget because of the way Congress has handled the district. We've been told that we should be treated like an agency instead of like any agency of the federal government. So they've cut this money out of our budget. Now, the hope is the Senate passed a standalone bill that would allow us to spend the money, but the House hasn't moved on it, and they would have to move on it. So right now, in this morning's paper, they cut out 400. They said they have to cut out at least $417 million immediately out of our budget.
Okay, so
to comply.
You know where I'm headed with this, right? Jobs, jobs, jobs. I mean, my goodness, how many jobs are Americans going to lose and where are they going to go? And what's going to happen to our economy when we start making cuts like that? And we are already making cuts like that. I know people, Jess probably knows people who have already lost their job with no consideration about whether they were talented or a good employee. Nothing, just, we're sorry, you're out of work. That cannot happen in a bubble. Anybody who has ever taken an economics course will tell you, you don't want job loss, okay? It trickles down in ways that you can't imagine. And I worry. People are asking me, are we going into recession? Are we going into depression? I mean, people are worried
Yes.
about money. People that never paid attention to money are worried about money.
Well, and especially in the District of Columbia, we pay the highest per capita taxes in America because we're the richest people in America. So we generally don't worry about it. But the federal government, which is what keeps us a top economy in the country, is being decimated. $87,000 from the Veterans Administration, USAID, all sorts of other cuts. They're also talking about moving agencies into the states for some reason I don't understand. But right now we have Ohio and Vermont and Massachusetts and other states fighting over what federal agencies they can suck out of the District of Columbia. So the district's economy may be totally devastated by the time this is all over. So we're very, very worried about it. And, I got to tell you, when the president of the United States stands up there and says there's going to be short-term pain for long-term gain, he doesn't understand what it is to live paycheck to paycheck. Because we should all remember what John Kenneth Galbraith said, which is in the long run, we're all dead. So,
Right.
For many Americans, it's always right now. I grew up in a family that was in kind of middle-class suburbia, but we were always broke. Always. We never owned a house, evicted many times for not paying the rent, cars repossessed. My mother was one of those women that dug nickels and dimes out of the couch to pay the $2 for the field trip when I was a kid in school. Never poor, always had food to eat, always had people that loved me,
Right.
always had a roof over my head.
But always
broke.
scrambling. Yeah.
And I've worked full time since I was 14 years old, which is why I stopped to do this when I was in my 50s, because I had made enough money that I decided I should give back somehow. And that's why I took a job that didn't pay me for 18 years. I don't know that my wife and kids were so happy about that, but I had enough money. I put all my kids through college. I figured, how much money do you need? Right. So that's why I did it. But I understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And in the front page of the Washington Post today, there's an article about a farmer in North Carolina who can't figure out what he's going to do because of the uncertainty with tariffs. He just doesn't know. There's no way for him to plan how many people he needs to hire, how many crops, what the crops should be. Are we going to put a tariff on soybeans? Maybe you shouldn't grow them. He doesn't know.
You brought up two important points, I think. One, with your quote, made me think that, because we try to be fair-minded as much as we can, but my point is, we're not hurting just Democrats. We're hurting Republicans too.
Yeah.
We're hurting independents. We're hurting people who never voted, right? If you live in this country right now, you're getting hurt by this. And there's another quote that people are fond of flipping around, like, hey, the person who dies with the most toys wins. Well, in my world, what that means is that you're spending almost every dollar you make, or you're leveraged to the hilt, and you've got these debt payments. And we talk a lot about student debt payments, but everybody's living on debt. They got car loans and mortgages. And when you start cutting jobs like this, you're going to have a real problem. And the second thing was really about people living paycheck to paycheck. People don't have savings. We've been telling people for years, oh, you've got to have 6 months worth of savings. I dare you to take a poll of the average American and ask who's got 6 months in liquid savings. Are there some? You betcha, but not the middle class or lower middle class or lower class, right? If we even have those classes anymore. So, Yeah, I mean, the farmer, the big point that you brought up, I wanted to get back to is the planning. As an investment advisor or a financial planner, what our jobs are to tell people, this is what I see coming down the pike. Here's how to prepare. Here's what to do. Jess has heard me say this lately, like I all I can do is freeze like a rabbit in the head, in the headlights and say, okay, what we have to do right now is realize we're all in crisis management mode. And that means you make very conservative decisions. I was just talking to a doctor the other day who canceled an order for a machine at their hospital that was hundreds of thousands of dollars. He wasn't sure if the tariffs on China were going to bring that price way up, but more than that, he can't make a decision. He doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't, what was it I said a couple of weeks ago to you, Jess? Consistency and competency breeds confidence.
Yeah,
We
we were
don't
talking
have
about the
that.
market and about how that's so important, the certainty and the consistency, and it's day to day at this point.
Yeah, and we don't have that. So, I'm happy to have the senator here, and I would welcome a Republican senator to come on too if they're willing to take me on.
If they're brave
You know,
enough.
bring it on, baby. Because there are some Republicans are starting to turn a little bit and say, this is not okay. This is hurting everybody, right? Uh, can you put the shoe on the other foot for a moment, if it's even possible, and give us any insight as to what you think the good side of these tariffs might be? I was going to be more descriptive, but I'll just leave them at these tariffs.
Well, I really don't see a good side because what's happening is, there's two schools of thought about this, right? There's people out there saying he's using this as a negotiating tool. Well, if he uses it as a negotiating tool, he's getting his rear end kicked. He's giving in to the Chinese on electronics. He's giving in to car makers today. He's going to give in, I drink 16 cups of coffee. I guarantee you he's going to give in to the coffee people soon. So he's losing on the negotiation side. On the other side, to put tariffs on countries that are poor to begin with and have very low tariffs. We've seen this with some of the Indonesian countries that make all our clothes now. I worked my way through college and graduate school by working for a men's clothing store in the days, a very expensive men's clothing store in the days where all our clothes were made in America, all the clothes that we sold. Yeah. You can't find anything made in America. I don't know if you go in far as clothes go. I mean, check the tags in your clothes. You see they're all made in places like Sri Lanka and Indonesia and Thailand. So I think I wrote to you in an email that when I studied tariffs, they were a tool, and this man seems to be using them as a weapon. And
I agree.
I really got to be honest with you. I don't know where this all comes from because look at all these businesses. I don't care if he's selling Bibles or it's a college or it's a steak business or it's a hotel in Atlantic City. This man has failed at every business he's ever been in. And now we expect him to rearrange the most complex government on the face of the earth. I mean, it's crazy to even think of that.
Yeah, I knew we were never going to escape the politics on this show. There was no point in it. But, I complained about this when Trump ran the first time. And I said, I don't understand why nobody is talking about, or very few people were talking about, 6 bankruptcies. Why weren't we talking about the fact that he never paid his employees? Why was this not a basic American concern for the general person who can't figure this out? And, for themselves, who do you know that's filed 6 bankruptcies? Okay. But he's going to do it with the American government. Yeah, we're going to do it with the American government if we're not careful. Right. Jess has heard me say this over and over and over again. If China calls our notes, we're done.
Yeah.
And we're ticking them off.
Yeah. And the difference is that you would never hire this man to run your company. But politics is emotional. It's not a matter of sitting down. That's what I thought. The same thought that you have, Doctor, when he ran against Hillary Clinton. I said, let's look at their resumes. reality TV star, Secretary of State, 8 years in the White House, college graduate from the best Ivy League schools. You wouldn't hire him as opposed to her, but we don't use the front part of our brain to make political decisions. It's emotional.
Politics is perception, right?
It is. It really is. It's all perception. And the Democrats, first of all, the truest thing that's ever been said about the Democratic Party was Will Rogers, who said, "I belong to no organized political movement. I'm a Democrat." And that's our problem is Democrats. We're the transgender people are so busy fighting with the gay, the LGBT community, and we're so busy trying to be purists on another front, or nothing's ever perfect enough for the Democrats. So we fight with ourselves as much as we fight with the Republicans. Whereas, there's another old saying in Washington, which is Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line.
That's right.
And we have to take responsibility for this man being elected. But let me just bring up something I wanted to mention before about being poor, because I was on the brink of it for a long time in childhood, and it's a downward spiral, right? You take out the payday loan and you pay 21% on it. Then you can't pay that. So you take out the car title loan and you pay 30%. You just keep on going down and down and down once the spiral starts. So, and that has, as you well know, economic repercussions all across the board.
It does.
So, I think that's one of the dangers here, but we're emotional about our politics, and we should. My podcast, the tagline for my podcast is "Make America Think Again."
And we will come back with much more, maybe talk about your podcast. I would like to get the Money Doctor's number. I think a lot of people have money questions right now.
413-773-3333.
And we'll be back with part 2 of Financial Fitness with Senator Michael D. Brown and Francis Ram. Financial Fitness right here on WHMP.
Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor is underwritten by Franklin County Technical School. We build futures. Visit fcts.us or call 413-863-9561.
Welcome back to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, and we have a senator in the house today.
We do. We have Senator Michael D. Brown with us, joining us once again. He's been on the show before, but we're always happy to have him back. The two of us get off often on not just politics, but economics. He's got a background in economics as well. Just before the break, we were talking about people who struggle with money. Our concern is that class is getting larger by the moment. We're putting more people out of work. Expenses are going up, right? That's what I think's going on. And I think the regular human is losing right now.
Even for me, I was thinking about, and you and I have talked about it before, trading my car, and I don't have a car payment now. And now I'm thinking, now's probably not a good time to do that. So it's hard to know whether you should put everything on hold for how long. How long is this temporary pain we're hearing about going to last? All those questions are in, I think, everyday people's minds.
Yeah, and the estimates are that people will tolerate this for about a year or longer. So, before they really speak up. And yet we are seeing protests across the country. The areas that I've seen have been more mature adults, but I'd like to see the younger people stand up and say, I'm not taking this anymore. This is my future. And I'm not going to be able to afford to get off my parents' couch if this continues. What do you think, Senator?
Well, I think that young people, one of the places that we're in right now is they're among the most disgruntled. So I'm not sure whether they're not out there. I know that I say to my kids, I found my first job out of college in the newspaper, and they laugh at me. They go, Dad, that's not how it's done anymore, Yeah. And I have 3 college-educated children, 2 of them who are now older. One's 32 and one just turned 30. They're making their way. But the youngest one, 27, can't find a decent job. She has to work as a server at night to make ends meet. And this is a different world than we had. Now I've been out of college a long time, but we never doubted. See, this again at the emotional level, I never doubted that when I got out of college, I would have a good job and a good career and whatever I wanted, from
Yeah,
that.
it was just find it, right? It was just like,
Right.
where do I want to work? Yeah.
Right. Kids don't believe that anymore.
Yeah.
I have a 21-year-old co-host on my show just for that reason, so that we can find out what the angst is. And it's funny, she was scared to go to the protests. I protested a lot on the Vietnam War, but she is an American citizen,
Yep.
born in Texas, but Brazilian. She's Brazilian. But her father was stationed in the United States and she was born in Texas. She has birthright citizenship, dual citizenship. She said, I'm afraid they're snatching people up.
That's a valid point. I don't think it's any secret. I'm not advertising it, but I'll just say that, for the first time in my life, I stood out with a protest sign. Now, maybe the young people are protesting online, but we need to see bodies out there. We need to see you on the news. We need to see thousands of people showed up if you're going to make a change. If you're going to affect a change in stopping something like tariffs or reckless behavior at the presidential level, you got to hit the House and the Senate on a constituency. We're not going to vote you in anymore. And that's the only way people are going to start changing their mind, because they don't have anything to lose right now. They've got control. They're just watching it happen. And I think you're absolutely right. The Democrats are not getting it done.
They're not getting it done. They can't figure out where they went wrong. And, they have gone wrong because the world has changed for young people. And we need to find a way to fix that as Democrats. And we have an old saying in politics is, it's one thing to talk and another to walk the walk. We talk the talk just fine. We need to find a way to walk the walk for especially for young people.
Well, we were busy trying to take the high road somehow, thinking that was going to work. And It's a little delusional these days. There is no high road anymore. There's just, hang on. You talk about sayings you have. There's something that I say over and over and over again to people who come to me with financial problems, and they say, oh, I did this wrong and I did that wrong. And I want to fix what I did wrong. And they're beating themselves up about it. And I say, you know what? That's not useful. It's useful to understand what you did wrong, but now we just call it so what, and you don't do it again. You need a path forward. I can't figure out why, with some of the great leaders that we've had, we don't have that path forward. But we're too darn slow in terms of politics, right? And Trump is doing like, I do it now and I ask for forgiveness later. But laws? What are laws? We don't have laws. Don't worry about. Let the courts sort that out.
Let the court catch up with me.
By the time they do, I mean, he's a felon, okay? He's in the presidency.
Is there anybody in America more experienced with the court system than Donald Trump? I can't imagine that he hasn't been in court one day in his adult life. But the difference between you, doctor, and a young person, you going out with, not that you're not young anymore, but going out with a sign is you have context. And they don't. Young people don't. This is the era they've grown up in. My co-host was born during the Obama administration, which is hard for me to fathom. I'm 71 years old.
Yeah.
But so they don't have the context you have. You understand that there are things you can do to make the world better, and they're not sure what to do. So they have latched onto a man who says, I just gotta point this out because I think this really explains the situation, is that one of my favorite movies of all times is a movie called The Music Man, about a con man that comes into an Iowa town and cons everybody. And what does he do first? First, he says, you have a problem.
There's trouble right here in River City.
Right. You have trouble in River City. And that's exactly what Donald Trump's done.
Yeah.
He's walked in and said, make America great again. And all these kids are saying, well, America must have been great, but something happened.
Right.
America's still great. It's always been great. But you create the problem so that you can be the solution.
That's right.
And that's what he's done.
you bring up the most important point of all of this, I think, and it's fear. People don't make their money decisions well when they're afraid. People don't make political decisions well when they're afraid. I'm going to tell you flat out, I was concerned about going out to a protest. First of all, maybe I'm not a superstar, but I'm known in the area. So I'm risking my business, right? I'm risking all the people that don't agree with me seeing me and saying, I will never do business with her. Okay. And I've avoided this for a long time. I've tried to stay apolitical, but there comes a point where I have to say, you know what? I don't care what your political preference is. When you start harming Americans, you lose my support. You lose my vote. We should not be harming Americans on any level, particularly about money. And so I really want to thank you for coming on and talking to me about this. And I'd like you to come back and we can talk more about money. I just want to say, I'd love it if you have one tip. I'm putting you on the spot, but if you have one tip for somebody just listening, just a basic family member listening, thinking, what can I do to make things better, or to prepare for what might be coming? What would you say?
I don't know. That's a great question. It's a very hard question to answer. I mean, I can tell you what I'm doing. I'm trying to hunker down. I'm trying to hunker down and stay the course, right? You're a financial advisor. I live to a certain extent because I'm retired off my 401k. I'm trying not to look at it, and right, because
Yeah.
I don't want to put myself in shock. But to talk about you being concerned about going out with the sign, the Trump administration has basically required me to take my sign down. And I want to fight. I really do want to fight it, but we're going to sell our house next month. And I don't want to start a fight on my front lawn when I'm trying to sell my house. So we're going to take the sign down.
That's fear.
That's right. And it's nice to, this is another political saying, it's nice to be loved, but it's better to be feared. It's more productive to be feared.
Yep. Well, we're out of time, I'm sorry to say, but I would say the same thing though. I would say hunker down, watch your pennies, don't buy things you don't need right now.
Right.
But this all has an effect on the economy. You stop spending, the economy suffers too. As an individual person watching your money, I think you got to do it right now.
How about the guy that ran out and bought the iPhone and then 2 days later realized there's not going to be tariffs on iPhone? I mean, how do you make decisions in this environment?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for having me on, Doctor, and Jess, and I appreciate it. You've got a great show, and I hope people are following your advice.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Francis, can I get your phone number?
Sure. It's 413-773-3333.
And you can visit hugyourmoney.com. We'll be back next week with another edition of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Ram, right here on WHMP.
I'm erecting this sign on my front lawn on behalf of the 700,000 disenfranchised people of the District of Columbia. My house is the first house you come across coming in the district, and everybody that enters our city should know that the people of the District of Columbia who pay their taxes and fight in wars and are exemplary citizens do not have the basic rights of citizens.